YouTube, what's going on? I'm so stoked that you're here. Have you ever struggled to hear God's voice? Of course you have. We all have. I know I have. I spent years of my life struggling to hear God, thinking that it was difficult, that it was complicated, that it was for somebody else, but not a regular Christian like me. All that kind of stuff. It's all just a bunch of lies and it's garbage. It is not true at all. You are created in the image of God. You're designed to hear His voice. You can hear God's voice right now, today. I don't care if you've been saved for 5 minutes or 50 years, you can hear God's voice. And so I'm sharing some of my top tips for just becoming more comfortable and confident in hearing God's voice for everyday living, not just the huge decisions of life, but even for the mundane stuff and just everyday life. And in this video, I'm actually sharing my number one overall tip for hearing God's voice. So stay tuned for that, guys. Just before we jump into it, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. My name is Duke Lamastra, and on this channel, I put out content on a weekly basis, all centered around experiencing God's presence and God's power in our lives in practical ways. So if you get anything out of this video, if you would consider liking and subscribing, and if you subscribe, tap that little bell icon so that you get notified of all future videos. That would mean the world to me. And hey guys, the most important thing that I want to ask of you is leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you liked it, didn't like it. If you have suggestions, if you have questions, I promise you I will respond to your comments. So let's get some engagement going and talk about this further. So thanks again for being here, guys. Really appreciate you. And now let's jump into the video. I used to spend hours just like on my face, praying, worshiping, whatever, just trying to hear God's voice and always coming away just feeling condemned, feeling like I was just feeling like beat up, feeling like I couldn't do it, feeling like I sucked at it, to be honest with you. And just being in that place, living in that place constantly, like knowing that it was available to me, hearing stories from other people and hearing, oh, God told me this, I heard God tell me this, and being like, what are you talking about? I can't even experience that for myself. And just feeling bad about it, feeling guilty, feeling condemned, all that kind of stuff that we do to ourselves. And I know that just from so many conversations that I've had as a pastor and people I've seen in ministry and talked to and all kinds of stuff, not just here in the US, but around the world, it's just such a prevailing problem of not being able to hear God's voice. Not even, a lot of people don't know that they can hear God's voice, or they think they can only hear Him for the big picture things, but not like the daily and the hourly and the minutely things as well. God is such a relational God, and He loves to communicate with us. And the Bible actually says that we live, Jesus said in Matthew 4:4, that we live, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word. And that word there is rhema. It's not just the written word, it's the word that God speaks to us personally, personal revelation that we receive from God. We live by every word that comes out of the mouth of God. That's how we live. It's life. It's sustenance. It's necessary. It's not an extra. It's not an add-on to the Christian life. It's not like something that comes through striving or struggling. It's not something that, after you've been following God for 15 years, this is what's available to you. Absolutely not. From day one, from minute number one, this is what you are created for. You're created to hear the voice of God. You're designed to hear His voice. You are a spirit being created in God's image, and you are actually designed to hear the voice of the one that created you. So tip number one, and this is from me to you, this is again my sort of number one tip that I like to, that's top two of things that I like to tell people that are struggling to hear God's voice or just want to hear Him more clearly, more often, more consistently. It's going to sound a little counterintuitive, but here it is. Stop trying to hear. I know that that's like crazy, profound, and deep, whatever. Stop trying to hear. Just stop. Stop the trying. Stop that. Look, what I'm not saying is stop listening. Don't stop listening. Keep listening. Keep listening to God. But give up the striving and the struggling and the beating yourself up and living in condemnation and feeling like you're not good enough and feeling like it's not for you and feeling like you can't hear His voice and putting this other stuff on top of it like, well, I can't hear God because I messed up and because I sinned. I can't hear God because this is in my life. I can't hear God because whatever. I haven't been following Him long enough. Whatever. Stop trying. Look, you have these two ears. If you're hearing me right now, then you have ears, right? I'm just going to assume that you've got ears. You've got these physical ears. These are receptors. These are sound receptors. They are designed to pick up sound waves and frequencies and whatever, and they go in the ears, and then your mind, your brain, I don't know how it all works, but it gets processed, and you instantly recognize and hear what I'm saying. You're not sitting there, unless you've got the volume just really, really low for some reason, you're not sitting there like struggling, like squinting your eyes and cupping your ear trying to hear me, because hearing is something that's a natural process. It's something that you were designed for. Your ears were designed for it. We have 5 senses. One of them is hearing. You are designed to hear. You can hear. You don't have to try. You don't have to struggle for it. You don't have to fight for it. You don't have to like walk around like this all the time. The only time you have to do this kind of thing is when you are in a situation where maybe there's a lot of noise going on around you, or maybe the person that's talking to you just isn't talking loudly enough, or whatever the case may be. But for the most part, when you are hearing, it's not something that you have to actively engage and focus on. It's a natural process. It just happens. The thing is, you have spiritual ears because, again, you are a spiritual being created in God's image. And you have spiritual ears that are, I'm just going to tell you that they're located in the same exact place as your natural ears, but you can't see them. So your spiritual ears are the ears that are designed and tuned perfectly to hear God's voice, just like your natural ears are tuned to hear my voice speaking to you right now, and the voice of the TV, and the voice of your friend, and the voice on the phone, and whatever else. Your natural ears are designed that way. So your spiritual ears are designed and tuned to hear the voice of your shepherd. Jesus said, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." All of his sheep. He didn't say some of my sheep, specific sheep, those that have been sheep for this many years. He said, "My sheep hear my voice." Now, you and I, we don't always discern his voice perfectly. We miss it often, but we hear his voice because it's in our nature to hear the voice of the one who created us. Okay? So just like these natural ears are designed to pick up sound waves and to hear in the natural, you have spiritual ears that are tuned and they're designed to hear God's voice. Now, I have not figured out yet how to do this kind of thing with my spiritual ears because I can't see them. If you figure it out, let me know. But what I am discovering is that I hear God better from a place of rest. Not from this place of striving, not from this place of struggling, from this place of beating myself up and just like, there's the thing about trying. Again, you don't try to hear God in the natural. To hear people speak to you in the natural, you just hear them. And it's the same way in the spirit. We don't have to try to hear God. We just position ourselves and we just hear. So that's my biggest piece of advice to you. That's my first tip to you in just learning to hear God's voice more clearly and more consistently. Stop the struggle, stop the fight, stop making it about your ability and your level of faith and all this kind of stuff. Just let that stuff go. Stop putting that kind of pressure on yourself. It just gets more, we overcomplicate it when we put pressure on it, because when we put pressure on it, what we're really saying is this is all up to me. And what actually happens is when I'm trying to hear God, like when I'm really just in there like this, like making it, and it's like a struggle thing, and it's like this thing where I'm putting pressure, like, God, I need to hear you, God, I need to hear you, please let me hear you, please let me hear you. What I actually start doing inadvertently is I'm actually trying to employ my physical faculties and mental faculties to hear the voice of God, when really it's my spiritual ears, my spiritual understanding. It's my spiritual ears that are designed to hear his voice. So it's this thing that comes from rest. It works best from a place of rest. Just like everything in the kingdom of God, it flows best, it works best from a place of rest. So if you're trying to hear God today, if you're trying to hear God this week, my number one piece of advice to you is stop trying to hear and just hear. So That's it, guys. I know that was probably overly simple, but that's my number one tip. And I really think that most of this stuff is simple. The biggest problem that we have is we overthink it, we overcomplicate it, we put extra stuff and qualifiers and different things on top of it that really just make it not make sense, and it becomes difficult and it becomes frustrating. It is not meant to be frustrating. Hearing God is meant to be natural for you because you are actually more spiritual than you are natural. You are created in God's image. You are a spirit being. Stop fighting for it. Stop striving for it. It comes from a place of rest. And when you rest in the Lord and trust Him, you don't put the pressure on yourself to hear, but you put I don't want to call it pressure, but you put the weight of it on God to say, God, I know that you speak to me because this is what your word says. Your word says that your sheep hear your voice, and I'm one of your sheep, so I'm here, God, and I'm listening. And just let it become a restful thing where it's through trust, it's through faith, it's through having a solid expectation on Him that He's real, that He's going to speak to you, that He loves to speak to you, and you just position yourself that way to hear His voice.